Thank you, Madam President. I've been through the comprehensive plan revision process more than once, and I've also been through a full rezoning of the city of Minneapolis. And what I would say is, if we continue to do things the way we've always done them, we're not going to have a different result. We are facing a situation in our environment, our city and our nation, where we have extremely low unemployment, affordable housing crisis almost in every major city, a lack of labor to work in the jobs we have, and rising housing costs as a result of the success that urban areas have seen throughout our country. So it's under that premise that I have a few thoughts about some of the specifics with regard to the plan. First of all, the plan is not only about land use and built form maps. The plan aggressively challenges issues like racial equity, sustainability, climate change, environmental management, and protecting our lakes and our beautiful Mississippi River. But much of the attention has focused, unfortunately, on the massive rezoning that is suggested within this plan and the built form that is going to happen as a result of it. So I want to offer a few thoughts. This plan is not going to, on its own, increase affordable housing at all. In wards like the one I represent, no one is going to buy an expensive house, tear it down, build a triplex, turn it into condominiums, and offer one of them as affordable. Now, that might happen in wards that other people represent, and that's what those council members have been tasked by their constituents to do, not me. But in my ward, unfortunately, I don't think this plan will bring about the affordable housing that I have advocated for my entire career in areas of affluence and areas that are not filled with concentrations of poverty. But in addition to that, we're not going to see tons of housing built without parking. And I really take issue with the idea that anyone thinks that all sorts of housing is going to be built in a ward like mine without any parking. No one's going to buy an expensive house or take a market rate apartment if they have a car if there is no parking. So we're not going to see a situation where tons of housing is built, no parking is built, every street is crowded, and everyone feels that they're entitled to a spot on the street. I'll also say that we're not going to see crazy, unrestricted development outside of what the current setbacks and height restrictions are in interior 1, 2, or 3 areas. It's very clear in the plan, and it's been made clear even in the staff direction, that interior neighborhoods will fit the current building envelope. So if there are new construction to be had, and I hope there is, I don't see the difference between having one house 6 feet from the lot line, 35 feet tall, with one family in it, or 3. The bottom line is the height's going to be the same, the setbacks are going to be the same, and so we're just going to potentially have more people living in those houses. But again, we have to figure out where more people are going to live in our city. And so this is one very teeny tiny step. I do worry that allowing for a major upzoning will have unintended consequences, especially in the areas of gentrification and displacement. Without question, developers are going to buy inexpensive properties, tear them down, build more densely, and likely raise rents as a result of having to buy a house, tear it down, pay for the land, and that is what markets do. That is what the private market does, and I do have concerns about that, and I think we have to be very conscious in monitoring that to make sure we don't see increased displacement as well as gentrification. In the ward that I represent, there were 2 very active small area plans, one in the Loring Park neighborhood, one in the Bryn Mawr neighborhood. Both of the small area plans were incorporated into this plan. The one in Loring Park, 100% was incorporated into the small area plan, even in places where staff had concerns about it. They respected the fact that small area plan process happened 2 years ago, went through a massive rezoning, and did not make changes. I can't speak to what happened in other parts of town, but I can speak to the 2 that were in my experience. And then lastly, I'll say there's a lot of talk about people who live around the lakes. And I will say that many of the neighborhoods that I represent surrounding the lakes already allow triplexes. Much of Lowry Hill, East Isles, parts of Sidna, parts of Kenwood already have B2 zoning or higher, meaning they can have 2 units plus an ADU. I can count 2 plus 1 is 3. Triplexes are not a lot different than 2 homes plus an ADU. So the world is not coming to an end in this regard either. It's different in areas where there are single family homes, 1 family living in it, and instead of 2, it could be 3. But that's nothing compared to the increased density we're going to see on corridors, because this is all driven by money, and developers want to build more densely. They don't want to be buying houses, tearing them down, and building 3 units. That's just not in their economic interest. Are there issues with the plan? Most of my issues have to do with process. I don't disagree with Councilmember Palmisano's point of view with regard to a number of the issues. I might state them slightly differently. This is a process that should have brought us together, not divided us. And what I see in my ward and from people who I respect and love is there's a lot of division and there's a lot of anger, and I think a lot of that anger is directed at us and our staff, and in these cases rightfully so. We should have been able to do more to try to quell fears, and we should have done more in order to take into consideration what individuals had to say between the first plan and the second draft. It wasn't until council members got involved with the leadership working on the plan that significant changes were made. And I would just wish that would have happened sooner, because that laid out a idea that our staff wasn't listening to the public. And I think to some extent the staff were doing what they were told, which was do something as big and bold as you possibly can, even though folks didn't understand what big and bold as possibly can meant. There should have been way more notice about a massive upzoning like this. The reason you didn't see as much controversy in the plans that have gone forward before is because they don't do as much as this plan is doing. And so I don't think folks knew that there was going to be this massive change in zoning, and change for most people is extremely hard. I appreciate Councilmember Palmisano's effort to try to make sure that people get notice about the zoning changes going forward. I think that's a critical piece to bring back trust in the communities where my constituents are very concerned about these changes. I don't think we should have hired a PR firm, spent $80,000 to tell people that what they're thinking is wrong. I think it's very unfortunate that that happened, and hopefully we can do better in the future at reaching out, because now we have a long list of people who have given comments, and we have their addresses, and we can reach out to them and talk to them about what the next steps will be in the rezoning process. Ultimately, and I say this in my personal relationships, and I'll share this here today, understanding how people feel about what's going on and respecting it needs to happen with everybody, myself included. We can't challenge other people on how they feel about something. We can challenge them on the facts, and we can challenge them on disagreeing with potential unintended consequences. But if people feel scared, we have to take them at the place where they feel scared. If they feel hopeful, we should take them at the place where people feel hopeful. But ultimately, this has to be something that brings us together. I want to commend Councilmember Bender for working with me in order to make changes in my ward. As a result of those changes, I'm going to vote for the plan today, as I committed to do, because I think that there is more good than bad, and I think we can work forward together on the things that are not positive as the rezoning goes forward, to make sure that we don't have the kind of process that we've had up until this point. Thank you.